Chapter 20. The Garzas. The silence in the back room of the gilded cage was a heavy velvet shroud, a stark contrast to the frantic clicking of chips and the desperate, low-decibel murmurs of the gambling floor outside. Here, the air was thick with the cloying, expensive aroma of Maduro tobacco and the sharp, medicinal bite of 30-year-old scotch. I sat deep in the leather wingback chair that felt like butter, watching the smoke from my cigar coil toward the dim amber light of the chandelier. Across from me sat the man who's been around longer than my 60 years. Motherfucker was a vampire because he looked at least 10 years younger than me, and it was rare for white men to age as well as black men. At the heavy oak door, my security stood like twin monoliths, unblinking, unmoving, their presence a silent guarantee that this conversation would never exist beyond these four walls. The man across from me took a slow sip of his scotch, the ice clinking against the crystal with a sound like a gavel. We sat in silence for a while, smoking and sipping our respective drinks. Finally, he leaned forward, the light catching the silver at his temples. He laid a manila envelope on the table between us, but his hand remained firmly on top of it.
I'm giving you what you've been digging for, Slim. But we need to be very clear on the terms. If this ever leaks, if a single word of this blows back on me or my interests, our relationship is severed entirely. And you know the price of that. You'll pay for it in ways that money can't fix.
I took a long pull of my cigar, the cherry glowing bright in the dimness, and let the smoke drift out of my nose in a slow, steady stream. I leaned back, letting a cold, humorless smile touch my lips. 30 years, I remind him. 3 decades of moving in the same circles, crossing the same bridges. Do you really think I need the terms and conditions speech now? You talking to me like I'm some mid-level street hustler looking for a come-up. I lean forward, the leather of my chair creaking under the weight of my intent. Let's not forget about your RICO case. 10 years ago, when the feds were handing out immunity deals like they were candy on Halloween, let's not forget what I did to help you beat that case. The man stared at me for a long beat, his eyes searching mine for a flicker of resentment. He found none, only the ironclad reality of my word. He slowly withdrew his hand from the envelope, nodding once. It was an apology he would never actually utter.
Fair enough.
He conceded.
It's just what I'm giving you is a small glimpse into a human trafficking ring, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. That, my friend, makes my RICO case look like child's play.
He pushed the envelope toward me. I set my cigar in the crystal ashtray and picked it up. The paper felt heavy, pregnant with the kind of secrets that change the trajectory of lives. I pulled out the documents, my eyes scanning the first page under the low light. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It was the silence of a fuse burning down. What the fuck, I whispered. The words weren't a question. They were a realization.
Read it thoroughly?
Bobby said, lighting another cigar now, the flame illuminating the weary lines of his face.
Your eyes aren't deceiving you. The connections are as deep as they are dark.
I turned the page, my mind racing to keep up with the ink. Rick Harris, I muttered, seeing the name typed in bold.
He's more than just a freelancer.
He disclosed, leaning back as a cloud of smoke obscured his features.
You see, you had your golden boys, Rick, the ones you looked after once you decided to walk the straight and narrow, but it's becoming clear to me why Rick was never on your list. He was a ghost drifting through odd jobs just to keep a few dollars in his pocket until that gun charge finally caught up with him. You remember the sentencing, 10 years flat. Yet, miraculously, he was back on the street in 2. You can thank Enrique Garza for that bit of judicial magic. He took a vested interest in Rick's future long ago, and he's the one who had been secretly employed him full-time until about 8 years ago.
I squeezed my eyes shut as I felt a tension headache coming on.
Rick is also marriage related to the Garza family. He's been working distantly, and I do mean very distantly for them in the latter years, acting as a ghost on their intel and investigation team.
I looked up at him, my brow furrowed. Shit, the fucking Garzas.
As you know, Emmanuel Garza is the new senator. He's the face of the dynasty, the man who shakes hands and kisses babies while he legislates his own prosperity. His son Gabriel is the golden boy currently running for mayor, positioning himself to be the next generation of power. Then there's Emmanuel's brother, who you mentioned, Enrique. He's the oil tycoon, the one with the bottomless pockets and the ruthless streak that makes the senator look like a choir boy.
I turned back to the papers, seeing a sealed marriage certificate from 10 years ago. Rick and Elisa Perez. Who is she? How is she related to them?
Rick is married to Enrique's daughter, Elisa. Elisa is Enrique's outside child that he made in Mexico. She has her mother's last name, and Enrique brung her to America when she was 16. Rick and Elisa has been estranged for the last 7 to 8 years. There's rumors from a reputable source that they recently divorced.
Why the divorce? I asked, my mind trying to reconcile Rick, the man I knew as a volatile, effective, yet broken entity, with the daughter of an oil tycoon. Bobby sighed, giving off a sound of genuine pity, as if he could truly feel pity for someone.
Mental health. Rick is crazy as a bedbug, Slim. To hear his wife tell it when he's on his medication, he's the most loyal, loving husband and friend a person could ask for. He's brilliant, protective, and devoted. But when he slides off, when he stops taking the pills, he's a beast. A literal monster in a human suit. She had him committed to a mental facility to try salvage their marriage, but Rick was too far gone. They just recently divorced, and it seems her family will be making an announcement about her engagement to a man in another prominent family very soon.
He takes a puff from his cigar. I thought of Leek. How much of this did he know? He and Rick worked for me when they were teenagers. But when Leek got locked up, I went legit like I've always planned. And Rick got locked up shortly after for a gun charge that had nothing to do with me or my operations. I've always kept in contact with Leek because I had a genuine bond with him. Rick was strictly professional.
The Garza family keeps Rick around just enough to make sure he doesn't starve or die, in addition to Elisa requesting he isn't completely cut off. But they keep him far away from their day-to-day operations. They've seen him at his worst, and they can't afford his volatility. Enrique himself stated that he would hate to break his daughter's heart by having to kill Rick, but the threat is always there.
I took a deep breath. The smoke in the room starting to feel oppressive. I continued reading, the names and dates blurring into a map of tragedy.
To help you understand what you're seeing, you have to understand the dynamic. Rick and Elisa still sneak around. They can't stay away from each other, despite the beast in him. Last year, at a small private family meeting, it was disclosed that Gabriel, the mayoral candidate, was robbed. He lost a file, a physical file that should have never left the Garza estate.
The pieces to the puzzle start clicking together as I continue reading, and names that tie them to that trafficking ring is on the file.
Exactly. Gabriel kept insisting it was a random robbery, a mugging gone wrong. He told his family he didn't know the person who took it. But Gabriel's an idiot. He underestimates that his family has eyes on him 24/7. They don't trust their golden boy to stay golden. After weeks of digging, they narrowed it down. They tracked his movements, his phone pings, and the people he was with the night of the supposed robbery.
He paused, letting the weight of the next sentence hang in the air.
Between you and I, Slim, that file contained information on the She Resort.
I didn't say a word, but my mind went into overdrive. She Resort, a rumored international trafficking ring, a network of resorts that cater to the most depraved whims of the global elite. Why the fuck would Leek knowingly hold on to a file that had trafficking information on it? I thought it didn't fit. Leek was many things: calculated, silent, perhaps even cold, but he wasn't a fool. He was holding a live grenade with the pin pulled out.
It's my assumption,
he continued, oblivious to my internal spiraling,
that Rick tried to retrieve that file from Malik. He was sent, or perhaps he went on his own to prove his worth to the family again. He tried to get it back, and it went sideways, unsuccessfully. And now both brothers are dead.
I stared at the papers. Who killed him? I asked, my voice cracking slightly. Who pulled the trigger on the brothers? He shrugged.
Obviously, the Garza family, they couldn't leave that loose end dangling. I mean, do you blame them? You know how this goes, Slim. Them boys shouldn't have had the file in their possession to begin with. In the eyes of the Garzas, they were liabilities. Only one of the brothers was actually tied to a family member. The other was just in the wrong place at the very worst time.
Damon was the social one, the one who moved through the clubs, the one who had been friends with Gabriel. He was the entry point. Malik was just the brother, the protector who had stepped into a crossfire he didn't start. He had been in the wrong place, wrong time, brother, caught in the gravity of Damon's proximity to a dynasty of wolves. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of grief, followed immediately by a white-hot flare of rage. Malik has been lying in an ICU bed fighting for his life because his brother knew the wrong politician's son. I took a deep breath, forcing my hands to remain steady as I folded the papers and handed the envelope back to Bobby. I couldn't keep it. Having this in my possession for more than an hour was a death sentence. I wasn't ready to sign yet. Is there anything else? I asked. Bobby shook his head, his eyes hooded.
No, that's the end of the line, Slim. Anything beyond that is a grave I'm not willing to dig.
I watched him. I'd known him long enough to recognize the subtle tension in his jaw. He knew more. He probably knew who the trigger man was, but it was only so much he was willing to share. For the first time in 30 years, I felt a man who knew everything was afraid of what he knew. I stood up the movement, signaling the end of our meeting. I appreciate the insight.
Don't do anything stupid, Slim.
He warned, rising with me.
The Garzas aren't the kind of people you take a swing at and miss. If you go after them, you make sure you bury the whole forest, not just a few trees.
I'm not a gardener, I said coldly. I'm a businessman. He nodded, signaled to my security, and was gone through the door before I could even sit back down. I stayed in the room for a long time, the cigar burning down to a nub in the ashtray. The information was a poison coursing through my system. The Garzas, Rick Harris, the She Resort. It was a web that stretched from the Senate floor to the most horrific basements in the world. Malik deserved better than wrong place, wrong time. I stood in the quiet wake of a revelation that felt less like a discovery and more like an epitaph. It had been 8 months since the night the world thought Malik died, and 2 months since Bree had officially signed off on his recovery, releasing him from the clinical sanctuary of her care. Immediately following his discharge, his mother had practically performed an exorcism, whisking him away to the soft manicured landscapes of France. She had begged him with a desperation that only a mother who has seen her son's ghost can possess. He had been reluctant, of course. Malik was a man with unfinished business and jagged edges. In his eyes, he was a soul suspended in purgatory. He wanted to know who had pulled the trigger, why the sky had fallen on him that night, and if the shadow he now inhabited had to be his permanent residence. I had promised him safety only if he remained off U.S. soil, swearing on my own life that a comprehensive report would be waiting for him upon his return. He lasted 6 weeks. When he appeared at my door, the French countryside hadn't softened him. If anything, the distance had sharpened his hunger for the truth. I could see in the set of his jaw that he was finally ready to hear the weight of what I had unearthed. We sat in the heavy silence of my study, the air thick with the scent of old paper and the lingering smoke of my own anxieties. I laid it out for him, the meeting at the Gilded Cage with Bobby, and the subsequent more expensive trail I had followed. I hadn't stopped with Bobby's words. I had tracked down an ex-employee of the Garza family, a man whose silence I purchased with a sum that could have bought a small island. That man hadn't just confirmed the story, he had filled in the grisly details. He explained how the Garzas had tracked Damon from intel from Rick, how they had moved with precision of an apex predator to pinpoint their location the night of the shooting. I told Malik with absolute certainty that the Garzas were the architects of his ruin, even if the hand that physically pulled the trigger remained a ghost. Then I turned to the matter of his heart. I kept the surveillance on Jada, just as you asked when you woke up. I said, watching him closely. She's safe. Her life is a quiet, almost tedious loop school, home, the occasional vanity of a shopping trip and dinner with a friend, except for one thing. I paused, seeing the slight shift in his posture. Rick is a constant. He's there for the birthdays. He's there for the small gatherings. He's even accompanied her and her friends on trips out of the country. That gave him pause. For a moment, the mask slipped, a flicker of something dark and ancient crossing his features.
Define a lot.
I told him. I watched as he processed the fact that the man I'd identified as a volatile satellite of the Garza family was now woven into the fabric of Jada's life. His face returned to that impenetrable mask, a stone visage. I usually prided myself on being able to read. Tonight, however, the pages were blank. "Did you know Rick was unstable?" I asked, my voice heavy with the weight of what I had discovered. "He never should have been your right hand." Malik shook his head, and when he spoke, it came out low and rough, the way his voice always got when something was working its way up from somewhere deep.
Did I know he was bipolar? Yes. Did I know he'd done a stint in the psych ward? Yes.
He takes a deep breath.
But I didn't count him out just because he had a mental break. The shit we've done, Slim. The shit we've seen. At ages when we had no business seeing any of it.
I thought about Malik at 16, standing there with blood dripping from his hands, looking older and younger than 16 all at the same time.
I had a psychotic break my damn self.
His voice cracked at the edges with the particular roughness of a man speaking on a trigger of his.
I hung myself in that cell. You knew that, and it never stopped you from moving with me. It never made you treat me like I was something broken that couldn't be trusted.
I felt his words move somewhere in my chest, and I didn't try to move away from it. "I never betrayed you. I love you like you're my son." He held my eyes.
And I loved Rick like he was my brother. He has never betrayed me before now. None of this makes sense to me. Why would he set me up to take the fall for something he practically put in my hands? He's the reason why I was even able to locate and retrieve the file. He could have skipped over me and taken it to them himself.
I turned his words over, searching for a logic that wasn't there. While I had spent the last few months piecing the puzzle together, the core of the mystery remained a shadow. The motive, the reason he had used Malik and led him into such a calculated trap, was a secret only Rick could reveal. I watched him and he watched me, and somewhere in that quiet I hoped he could see what I was and wasn't, saying that this wasn't about blame, wasn't me holding Rick's choices over his head like he should have seen it coming and failed to stop it, but he had to reckon with his part in his own shooting. I leaned forward, my hands clasping over the mahogany desk. FYI, according to Rick's medical record, he is schizophrenic, not bipolar. And you need to know, schizophrenia is a different beast, and I'm not here to tell you how to handle Rick for his betrayal. But the Garzas, I could feel the warning Bobby had given me vibrating in my own bones. Bobby was right, Malik. The Garza family isn't a target. They're a weather system. One man or even a dozen cannot touch them without being swallowed whole. You need to let this go. You cannot beat them in a game where they own the board and the pieces. He didn't answer. He simply leveled a glare at me. "Let it go," I repeated, my voice hardening with paternal frustration. "Take this as a lesson learned, Leek."
What lesson is that, Slim?
To stop saving people and start saving your fucking self. He flinched, his brow furrowing as if I had reached across the desk and slapped him.
I've always looked out for myself.
He responded, the lie hanging heavy in the air. "No," I countered, the truth spilling out of me like bile. "You've always endangered yourself for the sake of others. Tell me, would you really have done 10 years for manslaughter if you had taken heed of the warnings in front of you? You saw the trap Rick fell in and you still moved forward." His eyes bulged, the pupils constricting.
How can you sit there and question?
"I can question you all I want," I interrupted. "I question your self-preservation. You had no business with that file in your possession. None. Why did you have it, Malik? Why?" Not giving him a chance to answer me, I continued. "You kept a file that you never opened in your possession because had you opened it, you would have realized how dangerous it was." His jaw ticked, a rhythmic pulse of suppressed rage. "All because Damon came to you, right? Because he couldn't find his way out of the dark without your hand on his shoulder. Just like Damon would have been dead had you not bailed him out from his debt with the Colombians for $300,000. Am I right? He never told me about the debt he paid for Damon his first year out of prison, but I knew." The vein in his forehead began to bulge, a corded rope of tension. He looked like a man holding back a landslide. "I tend to never question you when it comes to others," I said, my voice softening but remaining firm. "But you need to learn when to let those around you fall, Lee. You have no self-fucking preservation." He didn't argue. He simply stood up as if he was done hearing what I had to say and turned his back on me. Let me remind you, I went through hell to get all of this information, and my head is on the line if you touch any member of that family. He closes the door behind him, leaving me alone with my thoughts. What will he do now that I've revealed everything?
Chapter 21. The shooting. The Hennessy hits the back of my throat like a punishment, not welcoming. I pour another shot. The kitchen is dark except for the light above the stove, that dim amber glow I never bother to turn off because I hate coming home to a completely dark house. I've been standing at this counter for I don't know how long now. Long enough that the bottle has gone from 3/4 to almost half. The ice I dropped in my glass the first round has long since melted, and I stopped caring. I stare at the counter. I am thinking about Jada. I am always thinking about Jada. That's the thing nobody would understand if I tried to explain it. It is an obsession, the way people use that word, like something sick, like something wrong. What I feel is clarity. Every other part of my life is noise. Tammy is noise, the hoes in the club is noise, the shop is noise, the money, the politics, the crimes I've helped investigate over the years. All of it is noise. But Jada cuts through every single frequency like she was specifically designed for me. Like God sat down one morning with intention and said, let me build something that will undo this man completely, and then sent her into the world and into Malik's life and made me stand close enough to watch and want to wait. I waited. I was good at waiting. Then Malik died and I thought, finally I can have a chance with her. I am not proud of that thought because I truly miss my brother. I couldn't keep medicine or food down after I was notified of his death. I've turned it over enough times that the shame of it has worn smooth like sea glass. I had the thought. I am not going to pretend I didn't. I pour another shot and don't bother with the glass this time. I drink from the bottle. A week. It has been exactly 1 week since I sat across from her in that living room that I know better than my own and told her I would give her space. I said it calmly. I said it the way a man who has himself together says things. I looked her in the eye and I said, take your time, I'm not going anywhere. And I meant the second part far more than the first. The next morning I reached for my phone the way I always do. It is the first thing I do every morning before my feet hit the floor, before I grab a cigarette, before anything, and I pulled up her contact and typed good morning. Simple. The way I always did. The message sent, and then I see the difference that never appeared before. The bubble is green instead of blue, and I felt something move through my chest that I did not have a name for. I stared at that green bubble for a long time, and I told myself it was a glitch. A network thing. I told myself iMessage does that sometimes, everybody knows it does that sometimes, it doesn't mean anything. I called her. The phone didn't even ring. It gave me a dead tone. I pulled the phone from my ear and looked at it like it had said something to me in a language I refused to learn. She blocked me. She blocked me. I set the phone down on the nightstand very carefully and I sat on the edge of the bed. I breathed. I counted to 10 the way my grandmother used to tell me to when I was a boy with a bad temper in a worse household. I counted to 10 and it didn't do a damn thing, and then I picked up the phone and opened the Ring app. The cameras loaded one by one, each feed crisp and clean, the way I'd set them up, the way I'd paid for them, the way I'd installed them myself over 2 separate afternoons while she thought I was just being helpful. Front door, living room, kitchen, hallway, her bedroom. And there was Sean. Sean, who has no business being anywhere near anything that concerns me, standing on a step ladder in Jada's living room with a screwdriver in his hand, dismantling my camera from the wall with the casual confidence of a man who has been asked to do exactly that. Tasha was somewhere off the frame. I could hear her moving. And Jada. I couldn't see Jada, but I could feel her in the house. I could always feel her presence in a room, even through a screen, something about the energy shifts when she's there. My hand tightened around the phone until I felt my knuckles pull. She told them. I don't remember making a decision to call her. I took out my work cell to call her. She didn't know that number. I remember the phone ringing once and then again. And then she answered and her voice came through the line. And even in that moment, even with everything I was feeling, the sound of her voice did something to me that I cannot explain to anyone who has not experienced this kind of warning. It smoothed something jagged in my chest for just a second before the rage came back up. Why the fuck is Tasha and Sean over there touching my shit, Jay? What is wrong with you? The pause she gave me before she answered was worse than anything she could have said. It was the pause of a woman who has made a decision. I recognized it, and it made everything in me go cold and hot at the same time.
How do you know Tasha and Sean are here?
And just like that, I knew I'd given myself away. I knew it before she finished the question. But the strange thing, the thing I've been turning over every night this week at this counter with this bottle, is that I didn't care. I wanted her to know. I wanted her to understand the full weight of what I feel. I wanted her to look at those cameras and understand that every single morning she woke up in that house, I was already there. That she has never once been truly alone since Leek died because I made sure of it. Jay, does it fucking matter? Why am I blocked? And then she said calmly and quietly,
Rick, please stop this. I'm hanging up now.
Jay, don't you hang this fucking. She hung up. I stared at the phone. I called back and received no ringtone. She blocked me again. I believe I stood in the middle of my bedroom for 4 minutes without moving. I know it was 4 minutes because I was staring at the clock on the nightstand and watching the numbers change and telling myself each minute that I was going to calm down and each minute finding I was not. Sean called me. Of course, Sean called me. Sean, who has spent the last decade riding on Tasha's coattails into a life he didn't build. Sean, who I struck up a forced friendship with because he came with Tasha and Tasha came with Jada, and Jada was worth tolerating anyone. Sean called me and told me to back off. Told me I needed to chill the fuck out. Told me, and this is the part that made my vision go briefly white at the edges, that until I could calm down, he thought I should stay away from Jada and away from his house. His house. I hung up before I said something that couldn't be unsaid. I am a man who has survived as long as I have by knowing exactly when to stop talking. Tammy called next, of course she did. She wouldn't shut the fuck up and leave me alone. I deposited 10 grand in her account faithfully in the middle of the month. And this month, I didn't do anything different even though I didn't want her anymore. Hell, I dropped 20 grand in that bitch just so she could leave me the fuck alone. I still tricked on her even though I had no intentions on ever fucking her again. I thought my silence and my doubling her allowance, we softened the blow of our arrangement coming to an end. Tammy's voice came through the phone already shaped into that particular tone she uses when she's trying to manage me. That soft, careful tone she thinks I don't recognize as strategy.
Rick, what is going on? Why are you doing this?
When have I called bothering you, Tammy? If I haven't called, it's because I don't have anything to say. Fuck. I hung up, and I don't feel bad about it. I feel nothing about the situation with Tammy. The memory of Jada's body was a brand on my skin now. After that night, after I'd swallowed her essence, her very fluids, I felt like I'd undergone a dark baptism. I was a different species now. It was like I'd gone vegan overnight. The very thought of another woman, the smell of anyone who wasn't Jada made my stomach turn with a violent holy revulsion. She was my wife in every way that mattered, whether the law or her own mind knew it yet. I had claimed her. I was her provider, her silent God, her only true witness. But God was being blinded. I poured a Hennessy and it crests the edge of the glass by a fraction and I don't wipe it. I drink. 3 days this week I drove past her house. Slow enough to see fast enough that I wasn't sitting. The first day the curtains were pulled and the lights were off before 9 p.m. and I sat at the corner for 20 minutes telling myself I was just making sure she was safe. The second day her car wasn't in the driveway. The third day, same thing. Tonight coming home I swung past and the house was dark and locked. And I drove home feeling the specific misery of a man who has been removed from a life he considered his. I am thinking. The bottle is almost half empty now, and the amber light above the stove is making the kitchen look like somewhere else, like a painting of a kitchen, and I am running through options the way I've always run through problems, methodically without panic, because panic is for people who don't have patience, and I have an abundance of patience. I've been patient. I've been very fucking patient. I will find a way back and I always find a way. Jada's hurting and people who are hurting eventually reach for what's familiar. I am familiar. I am safe. I am known. I am the person who showed up every time. Groceries when she couldn't get out of bed. A birthday party for Ari. A trip to the islands for her birthday. A 10-carat bracelet that she touched, but she acted like she didn't know what to do with. She knows what I am to her and she's scared of it. That's all this is. Fear. She will come back around. I'll pour the last shot and then the power dies. Not the block, just my house. The amber light above the stove cuts out and I'm standing in complete darkness. And I register that the streetlights through the closed blinds are still burning, orange and steady. which means this is not the grid. This is my house specifically. The first shot sounds almost industrial, like something mechanical and large. And then it opens up into something that is not one gun and it's not two. And the windows on the east side of the house explode inward with a sound like the whole world deciding to come apart at once. Glass across the kitchen floor. I am already down, my knees hit the tile, and I am crawling before I have a conscious thought about direction. Wood splinters above my head. Something tears through the drywall, and I feel the air of it on the back of my neck, and I keep moving. The noise is everywhere. It is inside the sound of everything. I cannot hear my own breathing. I crawl through the hallway on my forearms and knees, and there is glass under my palms, and I feel it, but I do not stop. My office, I need to get to my office. I need to get to the wall. I get to my feet for 3 seconds in the office doorway. 3 seconds is all I can risk. And I press my palm flat against the spine of the second book on the third shelf. The worn one, the one that has never had its pages open in the years it has lived on that shelf. And I feel the mechanism give the soft pneumatic release, and the bookshelf begins to swing. The bullet finds my forearm in a half second before I drop back to the floor. The pain is like fire. The bullet kisses my arm. Fuck, it hurts. I hear myself make a sound that I would be embarrassed by if I had the capacity for embarrassment in this moment. And I roll through the opening, and I pull the shelf shut behind me, and the darkness inside is absolute. I sit on the floor of the panic room. I can still hear the gunfire muffled through the reinforced walls, though it is already tapering. 20 seconds, 30. And then it stops with the same abruptness that it started, and the silence it leaves behind is enormous. I hold my forearm against my chest. That wasn't a regular bullet that grazed me. I sit in the dark and I try to breathe calmly. My baby would come to the hospital if she knew. I lean my head back against the reinforced wall and close my eyes. She would come.
Chapter 22. One night only. The humidity of late August was a physical weight, but inside the back of this car, the air was crisp and smelled of expensive leather. I smoothed the skirt of my royal blue silk gown, the fabric feeling like a cool, liquid second skin. It had been a few weeks since I'd wound up this private road to Slim's estate, not since I officially signed the papers to discharge Malik from my care. My phone buzzed, a sharp, annoying vibration against my thigh. I didn't even have to look. It was him. The guy I'd been seeing off and on, the one who'd waited until 10 o'clock last night to tell me he couldn't make it tonight. He was nice on paper, but he had the initiative of a sloth. If his passivity was grating on me now, it would be a death sentence later. I was done. Even Malik, a man who treated syllables like they were precious gems, had told me months ago to cut him loose. Drop him, he'd said once, his voice a low rumble during a session. I should have listened then. As the car pulled up to the mansion, the sunset was bleeding deep purples and oranges across the sky. Security checked my ID with a respectful nod, and I began the walk up the stone path. Slim's assistant had been relentless about me attending this summer soiree, promising networking with the city's elite. I'd never come to his personal events before, but tonight I needed the distraction. Inside the house was a hive of socialites and soft jazz. I took a glass of champagne from a passing waitress and began to drift. For an hour, I played the part of the polished professional, laughing with a former classmate from my PT program and dodging the wandering eyes of local politicians. But my internal compass was spinning, searching for a North Star I wasn't supposed to be looking for. Then I saw him. He was standing near the edge of the great room, a towering 6'4" silhouette that made the rest of the crowd look like background noise. His honey-complexioned skin glowed under the chandeliers, his broad shoulders filling out a black suit that looked like it had been molded to him. His shoulder-length locks were tied back, neat and sharp. As he brought a shot glass to his lips, his eyes shifted. They slammed into mine with the force of a physical collision. I didn't hesitate. I changed my trajectory, walking straight through the crowd toward him. He didn't look away, not even as he tossed the liquid back. "Long time no see, stranger," I said, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs.
"Long time no see,"
he replied. His voice was neutral, but his eyes, they were a wreck. I'm a therapist. I'm trained to read bodies. Malik looked physically peak. He'd put on at least 10 pounds of lean muscle since I'd last seen him, but his eyes were haunted. They looked pained, vibrating with a silent, jagged frequency. Back in rehab, he'd always break eye contact when he wasn't being directly spoken to. Tonight, he let me look into his eyes. He wanted me to see the wreckage. I was on my way to the restroom. Just wanted to say, hey, I stammered, the professional in me fighting the woman in me. He just nodded once. The silence between us was a living thing, heavy and suffocating. Don't go too far, I added, clearing my throat. I want to hear what you've been up to. Another single nod. He didn't look away. Something was desperately wrong. I forced myself to walk away, my skin prickling. I hit the restroom, released my bladder, washed my hands, and touched up my lip gloss. When I emerge back into the party, I find my eyes scanning before I fully re-enter the space. I collect a fresh flute of champagne from a passing tray and post near the edge of the room, turning my body at an angle that allows me to watch without appearing to. A man approaches me, middle-aged, white, affable, entirely harmless, and begins talking with the comfortable authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. I smile and engage with half my attention while the other half finds Malik across the room. He's standing with a man I don't recognize, occupying the same quality of stillness that has always been his, listening rather than talking, his gaze trained on some middle distance that isn't the conversation in front of him. A waitress approaches his periphery with a small tray, and I watch as he takes 2 shots back to back without pause, then accepts what appears to be a dark liquor on the rocks. For some reason, I don't feel like he's drinking to be social. I feel he could care less about being social at all. The man across from him speaks. Malik offers something back, short, maybe 3 or 4 words, and then he turns and walks toward the balcony. I excuse myself from the man beside me with a polite smile and follow. The air was cooler out here, the pool below glowing like a sapphire. I walked up to the railing beside him, staring out at the dark trees. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper.
No.
The word was immediate, raw. I turned to look at his face, stunned. In all the months of grueling rehab, through the pain and the frustration, he had never once admitted to being not okay. "Do you want to talk about it?"
No.
I nodded. That was the Malik I knew.
I'm about to head up.
He said, his gaze fixed on nothing.
I've had enough of this.
"Can I come with you?" The words blurted out of me before I could filter them. For a long, unreadable moment, he just looks, the furrow between his brows deepening slightly, not with displeasure, but with genuine puzzlement. The expression of a man who cannot quite parse why someone would choose his silence over a room full of interesting people and good champagne. I stand in his gaze and let him look. I don't explain myself or backtrack or soften the ask. I wait for him to say no. I wait for him to eject me. He doesn't. He simply turns and walks away. I follow. We move through the party together and apart, navigating the crowd in the particular way of 2 people who are not together but are occupying the same direction. Down the long main hallway, he passes the elevator without pause, choosing the staircase, and I gather my gown in one hand and climb without comment. The sound of the party diminishes with each floor, replaced by the quiet hum of a large house at rest, and by the time we reach the far corridor, the one I remember from dozens of professional visits, the one that leads to the room I always knew as his, the world below feels very distant. He opens the door and I step inside first. He closes it behind us. I find my place near the end table and let my eyes adjust to the dimness. The room is lit only by the ambient glow of the moonlight beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. I watch him the way I've always watched him, with the particular quality of attention that never quite switches off, as he sets his drink on the end table, shrugs off his shoes, removes his jacket, and drapes it over the arm of a chair. He loosens his shirt from his pants, works the buttons open from the collar down without removing it entirely, and the fabric falls open across his chest and abdomen, a glimpse of the body I have spent months professionally not acknowledging, rendered now in low light and total honesty. He picks up his drink and crosses to the chair by the window, lowers himself into it, and turns his gaze to the dark. I sit in the same chair his suit jacket occupied, and beside the same end table his drink just occupied, and reach down to unclasp my heels, lifting the hem of my silk dress to get to them. The clasps give easily. I set the shoes aside and sit for a moment with my bare feet on the cool floor, feeling the texture of the room, the quality of the quiet, the specific weight of the air. I thought you'd be gone by now, I said softly. I didn't think the rural life was for you. He finally looks at me, and there they are again, those haunted eyes, carrying whatever they've been carrying all evening.
I was gone. I just got back.
He left. The information lands and rearranges things slightly, opens a question I hadn't thought to ask. I file it away.
You're right.
He adds,
Rural isn't my thing.
where did you go? He took a slow, deep pull of his drink.
Hell,
You look good for a man who's been to hell. Something unlocks in him, something small and sudden and involuntary, the way laughter escapes people who weren't planning to laugh. A low, brief chuckle, quiet as a current, and it moves through the room and straight into my core. I felt my pulse jump. I couldn't do the good girl thing anymore. I didn't want polite. I was no longer his clinician and he was no longer my patient. I wanted the man in front of me. He turns back to the window and I continue to stare at a man I know better than he might be comfortable with. He's in considerable pain, alone by his own choosing. I slowly stand up. I reach up and I slip the straps of my dress off my shoulders. The silk gives immediately a whisper of fabric against skin, and I let it fall, let it pool at my feet in a soft blue collapse, and step out of it. I'm standing in nothing but my black and nude lace bra and thong. I take 3 steps toward him. The movement draws his gaze from the window to me, and I watch it travel, slowly, without apology, from my face down and back again. He didn't move, but his eyes darkened, his pupils blowing wide. You don't have to tell me what happened, I said, stepping into his space. I know you're hurting. Take it out on me and fuck me. His jaw tightens. The muscle along it flexes and releases.
no.
It's just for tonight, Leak. I know you can't give me more than tonight. Give me all that energy you're trying to drown in that glass. Don't go easy on me. He stares at me with the focused intensity of a person who is taking the full measure of something before deciding what to do with it. His face is stone, his eyes are storm. Several seconds pass, enough time for me to consider briefly that he will say no again, that he will be noble and composed and deny us both.
I have no condom.
He finally says, I do. He looks at my face. He doesn't judge. There is no flicker of surprise, no raised brow, nothing that rearranges the quiet consideration of his expression. He simply looks at me, and for the first time all evening, I feel the particular electricity of being truly seen by him, not observed from a safe professional distance. Seen. I walk to my clutch, extract what I need, and walk back to him. I stop just before his knees and hold it out. He looks at my face for a long moment before he takes it from my hand. He doesn't say a word. He unbuckled his pants, lifts his hips, and pushes his slacks and his briefs down to his knees while staying seated. He was already thick and semi-hard, a sight that made my breath hitch. He stroked himself a few times, his eyes locked on mine, and I watched him grow, fully erect, heavy and demanding. He rolled the protection on, and his gaze finally softened.
Come sit on me.
2 steps, I swing my leg across him and settle into a straddle, and his hand finds my waist immediately, one palm, solid and warm, steadying me with a certainty that makes something inside me feel warm. There's no need for foreplay, no need for anything I haven't already worked up over the course of this entire impossible evening. And somehow, without touching me anywhere that would confirm it, he seems to already understand that. He guides me down onto him slowly with his eyes on my face the entire time, reading every shift of my expression. He nods once, and I understand he's giving me the lead for now, the tempo, the control. If I want to slow down, the leverage is mine. He's built an exit ramp into this for me with the same quiet thoughtfulness he brings to everything. I have absolutely no intention of using it. I begin to move. His eyes close and his brow draws together, a deep crease of something that crosses the line between pleasure and relief. The expression of a man who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has finally temporarily been permitted to set it down. I take him in over and over, finding a rhythm and settling into it. And for a few minutes, it's mine to drive. The pace, the depth, the angle. I am meticulous. I am not hurrying. Then suddenly his arms wrapped around my waist and he stands up, lifting me with him without breaking our connection. I yelped, wrapping my legs around his back as he began to thrust with a raw, desperate power. He walked me toward the bed, hitting my spot with every heavy, lunging step. Malik, I choked out, my head falling back. He laid me on the bed and flipped me over before I could catch my breath.
On your knees.
He commanded. I obeyed, my hands gripping the sheets. He entered me from behind with a force that made the bed frame groan. It wasn't fast, it was heavy. He was dragging the entire length of himself against my walls, a slow, torturous rhythm that felt like he was trying to merge our bodies.
Is this what you wanted?
He growls, his hands sliding forward to grip the back of my neck lightly, just enough to make me feel the pressure and heaviness in his hand. Yes, more. I grunt out. He increased the pace, his thrust becoming jagged and frantic. The sound of skin hitting skin was the only thing filling the room. Every time I got close to the edge, every time my muscles began to squeeze around him, he would pull out completely, leaving me shivering, hollow and empty.
Not yet.
He whispered. He did it again and again, bringing me to the very precipice before snatching it away. Every time he felt my teetering over the edge, every time he felt my muscles clamp down around him like a vice, he withdrew himself from me. It was a beautiful, agonizing torture. He was purging himself into me, using my body to drown out whatever hell he had been through. Finally, the pace changes, his grip changes, both hands locking around my waist now with a surety that is the end of all equivocation, all careful rationing, all measured restraint. Whatever he had been holding back from himself, whatever volume he had kept turned down in respect for some interior rule he's been living by for months, releases now with the inevitability of a dam that is simply held for long enough. I feel the shift in him as a physical thing, a change in the quality of his presence, like the difference between a room with a closed window and a room with the window finally thrown open. This is what I asked for. He had been teaching my body what it could sustain before he asked it to hold everything he had. He gives me everything he has. I feel him in places that have no clinical name. I feel him behind my eyes and beneath my ribs and in the very center of my chest where things I keep carefully locked away reside. And I know with absolute certainty that I am going to cry, not from pain, but from the overwhelming, drowning fullness of it. The way certain pieces of music make you cry, not because they're sad, but because they're too real. If he withholds from me one more time, I'm going to cry. I clench involuntarily. He stays inside of me. He holds my waist unwavering through the first wave of it and then through the second. And when the third crashes, I come apart with a completeness I was not prepared for. Not the contained, managed releases of the last several months with a man who never quite reached me, but something older and truer and reckless. The kind of release that doesn't just pass through you, but reorganizes you, that files itself in your body's memory under a category all its own. My voice fills the room and I have long since stopped worrying about it. He feel him go rigid inside of me and be follows, a long, low sound pressed through clenched teeth, restrained even now, even here, exhaled into the darkness above me. I feel him finally let go of the weight he'd been carrying. He didn't move for a long time. We stayed there tangled and sweating in the dark. As my breathing finally slowed, I felt the rough brush of his beard against my shoulder. Then the impossible happened. He pressed a soft, lingering kiss to my shoulder blade, a single, perfect, impossibly gentle point of contact. My eyes closed.
Coming up on part 7.
Jada! Bring your ass here!
Hey. I'm not gonna hurt you, Jada. I swear. We family.
You know my uncle chose you for this because of your history with the brothers?
You are really wearing on my patience. It's taking everything in me not to kill you right now.